Welcome back. International Relations Minister Naledi Pandor says government is deeply concerned about the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Ukraine. She's calling for an end to the war. Now, just yesterday, South Africa abstained from a vote to suspend Russia from the UN Human Rights Council. Slindelo Masikane is following the story for us. She joins us now live. So, Sli, the minister is actually slamming the decision by the UN General Assembly to actually kick Russia out of the UN Human Rights Council. Why?
Well, they're saying that such decisions aren't really going to bring any kind of end to the war, saying by isolating one party from, possibly taking part in discussions or bringing them closer in order to find a resolution is simply just going to isolate them and make things worse. And so what we heard today from the minister at a press briefing was really the reiteration once more of the call to have people come back to the table for dialogue and mediation, also reiterating South Africa's position in terms of why we keep abstaining from voting against Russia in these General Assembly meetings, saying that South Africa's position is simply because they don't believe the UN has really been consistent when it comes to dealing with countries that are violating international law. So she's saying that by South Africa abstaining from voting, it doesn't mean that they aren't taking what's happening in Ukraine seriously. They just believe that there is another way in order to deal with this. Let's take a listen.
We are deeply concerned about the continuing conflict. We had warned in earlier statements about the loss of life, that war is not good for anyone, and we are extremely worried at the deteriorating humanitarian situation. We believe that as a matter of urgency, there must be a cessation of hostilities, which in our view would be the first step toward providing a comprehensive response to the humanitarian crisis that is unfolding. We continue to stress as South Africa that dialogue, mediation and diplomacy is the only path to end the conflict. And we noted yesterday in the explanation of vote that many member states are increasingly joining this view.
And South Africa is maintaining its stance to actually push for mediation in this situation.
Certainly so. According to the minister, bringing Russia and Ukraine back to the negotiations table and also South Africa offering to mediate, Pandor says that is really going to find a long-lasting solution to the conflict, saying that by trying to bring Russia to its knees is only going to push it further away, and also saying that, the UN should be playing its part in order to try and not isolate Russia by pushing them out of councils like the Human Rights Council, saying this will result in Russia really being a law unto itself and not being held accountable. Let's take this.
We have been clear that we adopt an independent view as to how we vote. We cannot be directed by anyone as to how we should vote on behalf of South Africa. We have said we believe the aggressive discourse, the name-calling, and the use of the General Assembly for passing resolutions that add further criticism doesn't add to the resolution of the problem. It's not assisting, it is merely expanding the range of hatred and conflict that we are observing from afar.
So let's talk a bit more about this, because you mentioned it at the start about why South Africa doesn't support the way the United Nations is handling the situation in Ukraine. And that's because the government believes that they've handled the situations across the globe quite differently, and they've taken a more heavy stance in this one compared to other atrocities that we've seen.
That's the position that we heard today that was being stressed by Minister Naledi Pandor, saying that the UN is really not consistent when it comes to how it deals with countries that are breaking international law, making an example of how Israel just seems to be getting away with human rights violations when they have invaded the Gaza Strip, and Palestinians are essentially suffering at this point. She stressed the fact that the lives of Palestinians are just as important as the lives of Ukrainians, saying that that is why South Africa is continuing to abstain from voting, saying that there needs to be more consistency and more accountability from the UN General Council in terms of how it deals with all countries that are breaking international law, because it seems as though they've just been a tad bit harsher and more aggressive when it comes to Russia. Let's take a listen.
We believe there needs to be a consistency in the approach of the international community to all countries that violate international law. When Israel launched sustained offensive military operations against the Gaza Strip, killing hundreds, flattening homes, burying civilians under the rubble, and devastating the well-known dilapidated infrastructure in such a small and densely populated area, the world failed to respond in the same way that it is now responding on Ukraine. We don't see Palestinians as different from Ukrainians, but the way that the world community is reacting, it suggests that Palestinian lives matter less than the lives of Ukrainians.
Okay, we're going to leave it right there. Our reporter Slindelo Masikane following that story for us.